My name is Winifred Bindley. I'm a volunteer at Hampton Court Palace. And as we know, Hampton Court Palace is going to be an Olympic venue this year. And it has reminded me that I was working as a volunteer for the Olympics in 1948. A friend of mine had said that she was going to apply, so I applied. They wanted volunteers to be stewards. And I applied to be a steward. And they wrote back and said yes. They hadn't even seen me. Had they known, they might not have said yes, but they did. Well, it was a big outing for everybody. I mean, you know, we hadn't had many outings. We'd just had 6 years, 7 years of war. So that people were sort of looking forward to having something different to think about. And, but they were, I don't remember the stadium being totally full at any point during the games. It was a rather down-key event, I think. And it was because it was so soon after the end of the war. People were still recovering. Families were still getting together again, which they hadn't been. Children had been evacuated, people had been in the forces, and so on. And some of them finding it quite difficult. They'd got used to being in separate places and found that more convenient. I met some of the other people who were working there, and one of them was a nice young man who'd been singing in the choir for the opening ceremony and was also interested in athletics and turned up. But because he'd been singing in the choir, he used to leave his coat down in the room with all the workers rather than take it in with him. And then we got on the train to go back to Morden on the tube. But I didn't realize he lived in Morden, and I lived just beyond Morden. Eventually I married him. So that was very nice. I found it quite exciting because there were lots of people from other countries. We hadn't seen people from other countries except the Americans and the Canadians and the Commonwealth people who'd come here to help us fight the war for a long time. So that was quite exciting, and they talked in different languages, which I hadn't really heard before. I might have done as a small child, but as a teenager I'd never heard anything. So that was quite interesting as well. I remember the long-distance running because there was a man called Zatopek who came from somewhere in Eastern Europe. I suspect Czechoslovakia or somewhere like that, although at that time Eastern Europe was a bit of a muddle because, of course, it had been occupied all through the war and nobody quite knew who anybody was. And he was always about 10 minutes in advance of everybody else in the race. It was not a very high-profile event. You must remember we didn't have television in those days, or most people didn't have television. I don't know whether it was televised. It was filmed, because I went to see the film afterwards. But I doubt whether there were even television cameras there. There was an opening ceremony, because there's always been an opening ceremony, but it was pretty low-key. I didn't get to see it, because I'm standing on the gate looking at tickets. But I heard about it from my colleagues. And there was a closing ceremony, again, quite a simple event, I think. I didn't get to see that either. And I can remember saying to my father, I don't know how they're going to get this organized in time. He said, in this country, we can organize anything. And that was, so they did.